Welcome back to the deep dive. And I have to say, the material you sent us this week, it really redefines the boundaries of what we'd even call a financial discussion.
It's a big one. We're not talking about small shifts in economic policy.
No, not at all. This isn't about, tax brackets or stimulus checks. We are plunging into a vision for a whole new civilization, one that, and get this, requires the abolition of the nation state.
The complete removal of all human taxation.
And the transfer of the entire global financial system to an artificial superintelligence.
It's an intellectual leap, not a step. These documents we've got, they outline what they call the electric technocracy, or ET.
Right.
And they're basically operating on the premise that the industrial age economic model isn't just dying, it's already dead. Technology killed it.
So our mission today is to get past that, that sensational headline and really extract the core vision.
The financial architecture, the geopolitics, all of it. We need to figure out how this system is actually supposed to work in practice.
And the central claim, the one that really sets the whole stage, is that automation and ASI are making human labor, well, economically obsolete.
Fundamentally obsolete.
And so the sources argue that any UBI, any universal basic income that's actually going to work long term, has to be a dividend.
A dynamic dividend, paid out from machine productivity.
Exactly. Completely divorced from the old system of taxing people's work. It's about distributing the new wealth from the machines, not just shuffling around the dwindling income of the last human workers.
We have to accept that premise to even move forward. They see UBI not as, a welfare patch, but as the inevitable logical outcome of achieving technological abundance. The entire structure of this electric technocracy is built on the idea that the old logic, the logic of scarcity that defined humanity forever,
has finally been retired by tech. Okay, so let's start there. Let's dig into what exactly they believe is collapsing right now. Okay, so this old logic of scarcity, let's unpack that. I mean, for basically all of human history, the rule was pretty simple and brutal.
If you didn't work, you starved.
Right, or you had to rely on charity. This link between survival and work was an ironclad contract. It wasn't just economic, it was deeply moral, right? It defined our culture, our self-worth.
Our entire social hierarchy, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the sources really stress that this wasn't a choice. It was just an existential necessity. Work wasn't about finding your passion.
No, it was about not dying. It was about making sure the tribe, the family, the community survived in a world where there just wasn't enough to go around.
And modern capitalism just refined that system. It swapped out, physical compulsion for financial compulsion. It promised you could get ahead, be secure if you just sold your time.
But the core mechanism never changed. The state, the government, it depends completely on taxing what people do.
Exactly. Wages, profits from human labor, the stuff people buy. That's what funds everything.
And what these documents are detailing is that the acceleration of AI and automation is now just dissolving this ancient formula. They say this is more radical than the steam engine or electricity.
Because it attacks the very definition of value creation. That's the key. Well, the old industrial revolutions, they made humans more productive. They amplified our strength, our efficiency. A tractor replaced 20 men, sure. But a human still drove the tractor.
But this is different.
This is different. This revolution, the rise of ASI and advanced robotics, it's replacing human cognition, human direction. The sources are clear. We aren't just talking about a few jobs here and there being displaced.
So give us some of the specific examples from the documents. What's the scale we're talking about?
Look at the global picture they paint. We're talking about massive chunks of the economy just vanishing at speed. For instance, self-driving transportation. That threatens hundreds of millions of professional drivers worldwide.
Truckers, taxi drivers, delivery people.
The entire logistics chain. That's a staggering loss of a tax base. And a huge social upheaval. But it goes way beyond physical labor. Algorithms are now doing complex white-collar work.
Like what?
Administrative tasks, legal discovery, even medical diagnostics. They're replacing entire office departments because they're faster, they're cheaper, and frankly, they're more accurate.
And the sources insist this doesn't stop at, blue-collar or white-collar jobs. Even the highly specialized fields are on the chopping block.
Yes, because that whole distinction between skilled and unskilled labor, it just collapses when an ASI can optimize both. A robot can now perform surgery with superhuman precision, drawing on a database of millions of procedures.
An AI can generate art.
It can generate art, music, code,
Yeah.
anything that satisfies commercial demand, it can do it instantly. And that's why the sources say the question has changed. It's not, will AI destroy some jobs anymore?
It's which few jobs will actually be left.
Terrifying, isn't it? Which jobs will actually remain indispensable to an economy that's run by machines?
And that speed, that scope of replacement, that's why they argue the death of the tax bases. It's just inevitable. If the economic value of a human being approaches zero.
Then the state has nothing left to tax.
Right.
I mean, think about the budget of any modern country. So much of it comes from income tax, payroll tax, corporate tax.
All tied to people working.
All ultimately derived from human economic activity. So if machines suddenly take over, say, 80 or 90% of value creation, that revenue stream just dries up.
And the whole system of public finance collapses. Schools, defense, infrastructure.
Yeah.
It all just goes away.
It collapses. Not because of bad policy, but because the technological bedrock of society has fundamentally shifted underneath it. It's a fiscal crisis born from technological success.
But wait, I mean, why can't the state just pivot? If the old logic is dying, why not just tax the remaining wealth? Or tax consumption more heavily? This gets to their argument that traditional UBI models are, what was the phrase?
Stuck in the old paradigm.
Right. Why are they stuck?
Because they're still trying to use the old tools. The sources point out 3 big failures of classical UBI funding. First, if you try to fund it by jacking up taxes on the few remaining wealthy people or corporations,
Just leave.
they leave. It triggers massive capital flight, servers move, businesses incorporate elsewhere, the wealthy just relocate, and you're left with an even bigger fiscal hole than when you started.
Okay, so capital flight is problem number 1. What are the other 2?
The second is the economic mechanism itself. If you fund UBI with, say, a huge consumption tax, a VAT, you end up burning everyone, including the people getting the UBI. You could wipe out its purchasing power before they even spend it. But the deepest critique in the sources is the third one, the moral and political failure. Funding UBI by taxing human labor or wealth means one group of people is forcibly paying for another group's survival.
And that creates resentment.
Huge resentment, dependency, new injustices. It just turns a technological problem into a bitter political class war.
That makes sense. It becomes a fight over a pie that's just getting smaller and smaller. So the electric technocracy's answer is you have to fundamentally change what you're taxing.
You can't fight the tech. You have to embrace it as the new source of collective wealth. The sources are absolutely definitive on this. Trying to manage this new era of abundance with scarcity-era tools is just futile. UBI only works if you reboot the entire financial architecture to tax the machines.
Okay, and this is where we really get into the radical territory. The foundational principle of this whole ET vision is that humans become completely tax-exempt.
Completely. No income tax, no sales tax or VAT, no wealth tax, no inheritance tax, nothing. They call it the ultimate liberation.
It's more than just a policy change, though. It's a whole new social contract.
It is a radical new contract. By taking that financial burden completely off the individual, you remove the compulsion to work just to survive. The rule is simple and absolute. Humans live, machines work.
That philosophical break is the key. You have to do that first to shift the entire economic gravity of the world onto the automated systems that are actually generating the wealth.
It's the precondition for the whole system.
So if the human is completely tax-free, we have to look again at what the UBI is. They're very clear. It's not welfare. It's not charity.
No, it's defined as the rightful share of the collective wealth of the machines. It's an enshrined right, like a dividend from a company you co-own.
This is the ideological core of it, isn't it? The argument that all this technology, the AI, the robots, it's all built on the cumulative knowledge of all humanity.
For millennia. Every scientific discovery, every cultural breakthrough, it's our shared heritage. Therefore, the wealth generated by machines that use that heritage is a common good.
And every single human has a right to a share of it, a dividend.
And crucially, the UBI is dynamic.
Okay, I need to push on that word, dynamic, because in the classical UBI debates, the big fear is that a fixed payment just gets eaten by inflation, right? It locks people into this minimal survival state. How does the ET system make sure this dividend actually grows?
This is where the ASI comes in its role as the financial guardian. It's constantly tracking a super complex, real-time index of global machine productivity. And this isn't just GDP.
It's more than that.
Oh, way more. It's tracking efficiency gains, energy use per unit of output, the speed of new tech deployment, 1,000 different metrics. So if the global machine efficiency doubled,
The UBI dividend automatically double.
proportionally, yes. It's fundamentally tied to the real physical output of the technological world. So it's not a static cash payment. It's like having an equity share in the entire global tech revolution.
Okay, that clarifies the philosophy. Now let's get into the hard mechanics. If humans are tax-free, we need to detail these 3 pillars of financing, which are all about taxing tech. Let's start with pillar 1, the robot tax.
So the robot tax is designed to capture the value of mechanical labor. The sources describe this incredibly sophisticated tracking system. Every autonomous unit, from a giant assembly line robot to a small delivery drone, is tracked, valued, and taxed on its output.
But how do you value that fairly? I mean, is it based on the robot's cost, the human wage it replaced, the profit it generates? That sounds like an accounting nightmare, especially on a global scale.
The sources propose a hybrid model, which is enforced by the ASI. The tax base is mostly the marginal output value, what the machine produces above its running costs. But it's also benchmarked against the average human wage for the task it replaced, adjusted for things like speed and precision. And this tracking is continuous. A robot that works 24/7 with 0 errors.
Gets taxed on that higher productivity.
Exactly. The system makes sure that the financial gain from automating a job is immediately funneled back into the collective dividend pool.
All right, on to pillar 2, the AI usage fee. This has to be way harder to calculate. We're talking about cognitive labor, intangible digital output.
Right. This fee is meant to tax the core intellectual value created by AGI and ASI systems. Because this value is, intangible, it's a logistics algorithm that saves a company billions, or an AI that discovers a new drug, you can't tax its physical output.
So what do you tax?
You tax its digital footprint.
And what does that mean specifically, the digital footprint?
It's a collection of metrics. Things like computing time measured in, terahertz hours, the raw energy it consumes, the volume and complexity of the data it processes.
So an AI designing a new solar panel would be taxed on the sheer computational power it's using to do that.
Precisely. It's like a toll for using the world's collective knowledge and computational resources. And this revenue is automatically siphoned off by the ASI, the financial guardian, before it even hits a company's books. It flows straight to the UBI pool.
And then there's pillar 3, the corporate tech tax. This sounds a bit like an anti-monopoly measure.
It serves 2 purposes, really. First, it captures those massive windfall profits. The sources admit that some companies will just leverage automation so effectively they'll make extraordinary amounts of money. This is an extra profit share to make sure those huge gains also feed the dividend.
And then the second purpose.
The second is more philosophical. It's framed as a repayment.
A repayment for what?
For using society's foundational infrastructure. For using all the accumulated human knowledge that made the ASI possible in the first place. Every law of physics, every mathematical theorem, that's all a shared asset.
So a company using that shared heritage to make a fortune owes a piece of it back to the system.
It's a safeguard against a pure, unchecked plutocracy.
This all sounds incredibly complex, but the sources claim it leads to unprecedented price stability. I'm still skeptical. If you give everyone on Earth a guaranteed income, demand is going to surge. How do they solve the classic inflation problem?
Their argument is that traditional inflation happens when you create purchasing power that isn't matched by real supply, just printing money.
Right.
In the electric technocracy, the new purchasing power, the UBI dividend, is created in direct proportion to the real physical productivity of the machines.
So supply can actually keep up with demand almost instantly.
Exactly. Because supply is no longer constrained by human labor hours. If the machines can produce twice as many goods and services, the UBI rises. But the supply of goods rises right along with it, which cancels out the inflationary pressure. The currency is basically backed by the productivity of the global tech network.
And holding this all together, preventing fraud and chaos, is the ASI, the financial guardian. This feels like the most necessary and maybe the most terrifying piece of the puzzle.
It's the ultimate check against human failure. Its function is pure oversight. It gathers real-time data on every transaction, every tax machine, every dividend payment, globally.
Right.
Because it's not human, it can't be corrupted by greed or politics. It spots tax evasion or fraud instantly.
But isn't handing over the entire global financial system to a single non-human entity the very definition of tyranny? Even an incorruptible one. Who watches the watcher? Who audits the ASI's code?
That's the critical question, and the sources try to answer it. They insist the ASI's role is purely administrative. It's the accountant, the auditor, the distributor. It doesn't set policy.
It doesn't decide how much the UBI should be.
No, it just executes the parameters that are set by the human population through the political process. And its transparency is supposed to be absolute. All its calculations, all its data flows are open and verifiable by human oversight teams. The goal is to get rid of human corruption without creating a digital dictator.
It's a fascinating separation of powers. The machine manages the economy, but humanity sets the course. And the UBI payment isn't the only benefit, right? There's a whole safety net funded by this machine tax.
The UBI is just the foundation for you to spend how you want. The machine tax also funds universal fundamental rights. Things like fully automated healthcare predictive diagnosis, robotic surgery, all managed by AI available to everyone.
And education.
AI customized education, lifelong learning that's perfectly tailored to your aptitudes, constantly updated by the ASI's knowledge base.
What about basic needs like housing and, internet?
Standardized, high-quality housing is built by robots, making shelter a guaranteed right. No more homelessness. And, critically, free digital participation, universal high-speed internet is considered a fundamental right, so everyone can participate in this new world and its democracy. The goal is to solve all the major survival problems at once.
Okay, this whole structure, a global tax on tech, distributed equally to every human. This requires an unbelievable geopolitical shift. The sources are pretty clear that the biggest barrier is political borders, national egoism.
You can't have it. You can't have one country taxing AI at 50% and their neighbor taxing it at 5%.
The capital would just flow to the 5% country?
Instantly. The sources are blunt about this. National sovereignty, at least in the economic sense, has to be dismantled for this to work. If you have 200 competing tax zones, the whole thing falls apart. You create new tax havens, new inequalities, and you just accelerate the collapse of the nations trying to do the right thing.
So the only solution is to view the entire world as one unified civilization, where the wealth flows equally to everyone, no matter where the robot that generated it happens to be physically located.
Exactly. And to do that, the sources refer to something called the World Succession Deed 18009-8. This is framed as the key international treaty that transitions humanity from a bunch of competing states into a single functional economic civilization.
Okay, let's dig into that. A world succession deed, that sounds massive. How does one treaty just overcome centuries of national identity and conflict?
Well, the deed, as they describe it, is this huge legal framework that basically harmonizes global economic law.
Yeah.
It doesn't erase culture or local governments, but it centralizes fiscal policy. It eliminates the concept of a tax haven by creating a single mandatory tax on automated assets everywhere.
So the wealth generated in, say, a highly developed industrial zone in one part of the world
Gets distributed equally to every human, including someone living in what used to be a developing nation. It closes that historical inequality gap in a single stroke.
One world, one income, one economic law. Astonishing. Now back to the politics of it. If the ASI is the financial advisor, how does actual human governance work?
The sources are very specific that the ASI's role is advice, not command. It processes these insane amounts of data, climate science, resource models, social feedback, and it develops transparent solution proposals. It's the ultimate, unbiased, data-driven consultant for humanity.
But the crucial part is that humans have to vote on these proposals. This is the direct digital democracy, or DDD.
That's the political cornerstone. Every human, once they're registered in this unified system, gets a secure, verifiable vote on a global blockchain. When the ASI proposes a solution, say, a plan to deploy robotic solar farms across the planet, humanity votes on it directly.
And the claim is that this dissolves political parties and lobbyists.
Because the decisions are transparent, data-driven, and based on direct citizen input. It removes the old conflicts of interest that were all rooted in fighting over scarce resources.
But is that really democracy? I mean, if the ASI presents the mathematically optimal answer, isn't a human vote just rubber stamping an algorithm? Does this system allow for human disagreement or even irrationality?
That's the necessary tension, right? The sources say the ASI presents multiple vetted options, not just one. And it gives transparent simulations of the consequences of each choice. Humans keep the sovereign right to reject the optimal solution.
So if the perfect infrastructure plan would mean paving over a beloved historical site?
We can vote no. The DDD is meant to combine the insane efficiency of ASI data analysis with the irreplaceable human values of ethics, culture, and, yes, even our irrational creativity.
To put all this in context, the sources contrast it with older systems like the Roman bread and circuses. Why did that fail where this is supposed to succeed?
The history is vital here. The Roman grain dole was a political tool. It was meant to keep an angry population quiet and maintain the power of the emperors. It was charity, not justice. It was just a band-aid.
And medieval poor relief.
Same problem. It depended on the mercy of the church or a wealthy lord. It was never an enshrined economic right. It could be taken away at any moment.
And even the industrial age, which created all this wealth, didn't solve the core problem.
No, it just supercharged the old logic and made survival even more dependent on labor. The historical rupture, as the sources define it, is that the electric technocracy is the first model that's actually sustainable. All the old utopias failed because they didn't have the energy and productivity base to actually guarantee abundance.
But now, with machines as a potentially infinite source of value,
UBI becomes the logical, inevitable distribution system. We're finally moving from managing the tragedy of the commons to distributing the blessing of the commons.
So now we get to what might be the most profound question in this entire deep dive. If the machines are the workers and the ASI is the accountant, what is left for us? The sources describe this radical shift where the human becomes the wishmaster.
This is the grand purpose they see for post-scarcity humanity. If the ASI and the robots are the jinn, the tireless servants who can execute any task perfectly,
Then the human role is to be the source of the wish, the generator of the creative impulse, the dreamer.
we're liberated from the drudgery of effort and elevated to the role of visionary. Our value comes from our imagination, our ability to formulate a desire, not from our ability to swing a hammer or type on a keyboard.
It sounds like a perfect division of labor, if a bit utopian. Humans provide the why, the meaning, the creativity, the longing. And the machines provide the how, the precision, the execution, the speed. Can you give us some of the specific examples they use for this wishmaster function?
The examples really show the scale they're thinking on. Take city planning. A small team of architects could present a purely conceptual, emotional plan for a new neighborhood. No budget, no material constraints, just pure human-focused design.
And the AI just builds it.
The AI takes that vision, instantly validates its structural integrity, and then instructs an army of construction robots to manifest it, maybe in a matter of days.
What about in art?
Same principle. An artist might just need to describe a new kind of music or a theoretical sculpture, and the AI robot network brings it into physical existence with flawless technique. The artist is still the author, the creative source, but the physical labor is gone.
Or a scientist could have a wild hypothesis for a cure.
And a quantum computer simulates it overnight and delivers the answer. The human is the spark, the machine is the fire.
But I see the psychological trap here immediately. For our entire history, meaning has been tied to necessity. We worked hard because we had to feed the kids, to fight the war, to cure the disease. When you have freedom without fear, when your survival is totally guaranteed, where does your motivation even come from?
That is the dilemma of meaning. The sources are very, very clear that this isn't an automatic paradise. When all those external pressures disappear, a huge existential vacuum opens up. The question changes from, how do I survive, to the terrifyingly open question, what is my purpose in an abundant universe?
And the risk, they say, isn't economic, it's psychological. It's a kind of societal atrophy, falling into boredom or nihilism.
Or just passive consumption. The sources warn about the danger of mass digital escapism, just using all this amazing technology to binge-watch shows in immersive VR for the rest of your life, sinking into apathy because there's no reason to strive. If all your needs are met, why struggle to create a masterpiece?
The solution to scarcity creates a crisis of purpose.
A profound one.
So if that old cultural story survival through work is dead, what's the new story humanity has to invent to avoid this trap?
The sources suggest that meaning has to be reinvented in voluntary, non-compulsory effort, focusing on the things machines can't replicate. Genuine, unpredictable human creativity, deep exploration of both the cosmos and our own consciousness, art for its own sake.
And connection.
And, most importantly, cultivating deep, complex human connections now that they're free from economic conflict. It's about replacing the compulsion of labor with the joy of effort, turning necessity into choice.
And there's one last really powerful claim, that the ASI brings back a feeling of awe that we've kind of lost.
Yes, because science, for all its wonders, often reduced the universe's mysteries to just a method. But this ET world is a daily demonstration of the impossible. Abundance, the end of disease, limitless clean energy, the ASI processing cosmic data and revealing new wonders every day. It creates a lived reality of profound awe.
It's a feeling of being part of something vast and incomprehensible.
A feeling that used to be reserved for mystics or religious prophets. But now it's just the shared common experience of everyone in the civilization.
So this vision of the Wishmaster and the electric technocracy, it sounds like utopia, but the sources immediately pull back on that. They warn that paradise is not guaranteed.
Not at all. The technological singularity, that moment of accelerating perfected discovery, They say it's inevitable, but they frame it explicitly as a fork in the road.
The stakes couldn't be higher.
They really couldn't. The same incredible power that can provide global abundance can also become the ultimate tool of control. The choice we face this century is whether ASI becomes an engine of liberation for everyone or the perfect instrument of tyranny for a few.
And they argue the default path, if we do nothing, is dystopia.
It leans toward dystopia. Let's detail that default path, what they call technological feudalism. In this scenario, without a global system like the ET, a small, hyper-rich elite monopolizes the ASI and all the automated wealth it creates. Global productivity explodes, but all that wealth flows straight to the top, cementing their power forever.
And the rest of humanity, now economically useless, falls into what they call digital serfdom. What does that actually look like?
It's enforced by total digital surveillance and control. Freedom is replaced by monitoring. Your access to resources, to healthcare, to anything becomes conditional on your obedience to the ruling elite. You're not a citizen anymore. You're a data point to be managed.
Surviving on some meager conditional UBI that's designed purely for social control, not liberation.
That's exactly. A pacifier, not a dividend.
Now, the sources then introduce this very specific political contrast to show the wrong paths. They call it the axis of immortality. And we have to be impartial here, just reporting on the concepts as they're described.
Yes. The sources identify two dangerous paths that current political forces are on. The first is biological immortality. This is linked in the sources to the ambitions of some tech elites and political figures. This focus on using tech to conquer death itself.
And the danger here is what?
The source states that this longevity becomes an exclusive luxury product. It's reserved for the very wealthy and the ruling class. They call it the apartheid of time.
The apartheid of time. Wow.
When the rulers can live forever, they privatize time itself. Generational change, the natural way societies evolve and power shifts, just stops. The eternal ruling class cements its power, and any kind of democratic progress becomes impossible for the mortal majority.
The second wrong path is political immortality. This is linked to certain authoritarian doctrines.
This is about engineered stagnation. This doctrine relies on creating a state of permanent crisis. Manufactured external threats, endless low-level wars, constant paranoia.
And the goal?
The goal is to freeze history. Abolish any democratic process that allows for change and legitimize eternal repression. By keeping everyone in a constant state of emergency, the regime guarantees its own political survival indefinitely.
And the true horror, the sources argue, is when these two false paths combine.
That cruel synthesis, it creates this electronic feudal system run by eternal rulers. The elites get their technological immortality, and they rule forever. Meanwhile, the sources describe this terrifying fate for the rest of humanity, the people made obsolete by the machines.
What happens to them?
The system has to manage this excess population. So the sources suggest that the moment you get your dismissal notice from the automated factory, you are immediately handed a draft notice for the front lines.
Oh my God.
The majority is sent to fight in staged, endless wars. Wars designed purely to consume resources, maintain that state of emergency, and frankly, to eliminate the human material that was made obsolete by the very same technology that empowers the immortal elite.
So the stakes they're existential. And the electric technocracy is offered as the complete alternative, the true immortality.
Right. The ET vision isn't about the immortality of one person's body or one regime's power. It's about the immortality of the species. It's about continuity, cosmic expansion, all achieved through shared abundance and collective creativity.
The difference between private time and species time.
And the final decision boils down to something very simple but profound.
It's, will 10 trillion machines and the limitless power of ASI work for the profit of a tiny few, enforcing serfdom on a planet locked in fake wars?
Or will those 10 trillion machines work for the unconditional shared freedom of every human being? The system of UBI, financed by AI and distributed to all, is, according to these sources, the hinge of the future. It's the decision that determines which path humanity takes. Hashtag head outro.
That was an expansive and, frankly, often unsettling deep dive. Let's try to synthesize the key points before we wrap up. The core premise we had to start with was that the old logic of taxing human labor is dying.
It's dying because AI and robots are making that labor irrelevant. And this forces a radical solution. The classical UBI models, they're just structurally broken because they still rely on taxing that diminishing human income.
So the electric technocracy demands the complete tax exemption of humans and instead makes UBI a dynamic dividend, a rightful share of rapidly growing machine abundance.
Functionally, it relies on those three pillars of tech taxation: the robot tax, the AI usage fee, and the corporate tech tax, all managed by that incorruptible ASI financial guardian.
But for it to work, it demands that incredible geopolitical leap. The abolition of nation-states as economic competitors, unified under something like the World Succession Deed.
And that transition completely redefines what it means to be human. We shift from compulsory worker to voluntary wishmaster, the source of meaning, creativity. But it's a freedom that requires us to overcome that huge psychological challenge of finding purpose when necessity is gone.
The sources ultimately frame the singularity not as our destiny, but as a dangerous and urgent choice. It's the stark contrast between a utopia of shared abundance and a technological feudalism where immortality is privatized and the majority are condemned to servitude.
And the UBI mechanism is the tipping point.
The electric technocracy promises freedom from scarcity, but it demands something much harder in return. The courage to embrace freedom without the guardrails of necessity. The courage to define our own worth.
So we'll leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. If this technological transition happened tomorrow seamlessly, your health, safety, and comfort were guaranteed forever. What new, fundamental purpose, totally unrelated to survival or money, would you choose for your life?
What great work would emerge if the only thing required was your own desire?
We invite you to explore that question. Until our next deep dive.
We'll see you soon.